Hi, Mary here, and today we are talking about how much an author can expect to make on a book. We are talking finances, everyone's favorite taboo topic. And I am going to be speaking specifically about authors who publish with publishing companies who pay you, the author, for the right to publish your book. Okay, so that is not I'm not talking about self publishing, and I'm not talking about any hybrid arrangements in which you, as the author, are expected to contribute financially. I'm only talking about publishers who pay you for the right to publish your book. Okay. I wanted to talk about this because I can't tell you how many times I Googled this kind of thing before getting my first book deal. I was so curious how much like book deals can be. And it's so intriguing. It's such a black hole because you hear these, sensational numbers for some book deals. When book deals make the news, it's always a celebrity who sold their book for seven figures or something. But then you wonder, well, like if I'm not a celebrity, how much could I get for my book? Is it something I could live off of? Is it just pocket change? I don't even know. And there really is not a lot of credible information out there. And so I wanted to provide some illumination around this question. Part of the reason it's hard to find information is that it really does vary tremendously. And this is what I read over and over again during my own Google searches back in the day. There's an enormous range of what is possible. But also I get how infuriating it is to, try to get some kind of concrete information and just wind up with a bunch of people telling you, it depends. So while I can't, give you a definitive answer for you, of course, because I don't know you or your book or your circumstances or anything that would allow me to do that, I do want to be as concrete as possible here so that you'll have something to use as a reference. Okay. So, to get started, to get concrete from the get-go, my personal friends have gotten book advances from $5,000 to $450,000. All right. So that is just my personal experience. This is a personal anecdote to back up this claim that it varies tremendously. There you have it. The range captured in my personal relationships. The person whose book sold for $5,000 was no less talented or brilliant or connected than the person whose book sold for almost $500,000. It was part timing. It was part luck. It was part the market. It was part whatever you call the universe involving itself in the turn of events. The friend whose book sold for $450,000, since I know that's probably what you want the more details about, I just think you should know she had spent 10 years trying to sell that book and couldn't even find an agent to represent it for years and years, rewriting it, trying to get an agent, rewriting it before it was finally picked up and then, sold for what is unquestionably a very large advance for a first time author or really for any author. Okay. So that's what's possible here, guys. And if you're curious about ranges within specific genres, you can Google it. You may find some information, but so much depends. So much depends on stuff that you can't just read online. What do I mean by an advance? So let's talk advances. Okay. When people tell you what their book sold for, what they mean is what the size of their advance was. An advance is money that you are paid or guaranteed upon the sale of your book to a publisher. And it's called an advance because it comes out of your future royalties. So it's money that you get that will come out of your royalties that you earn on the book once it starts selling, once it's on shelves. The nice thing about an advance, though, is that if your book does not sell as well as hoped, hopefully it will, but if it doesn't, and therefore your royalties never rise to the level of your advance, they never actually cover your advance, you still keep the advance. You keep that money. That money is yours no matter what happens. And since many books don't make a profit, especially for first-time authors, this is a very good thing, very good assurance for you as a writer. Now, advances in the United States are typically paid out in 3 installments. You'll get the first installment upon the signing of your contract, the second installment when your book manuscript is done and goes to production. So after your editor gives it his or her or their stamp of approval, which is typically anywhere from 3 to 15 months or so after the signing of the contract. And then the third installment comes when it's published. So if your book sells for $90,000, you get $30,000 when you sign the contract, $30,000 when the book is done, $30,000 when the book hits the shelves. Again, this money is in advance on your royalties, but you won't actually have to pay it back. Now, I should say this is assuming you write and deliver the book as expected. You have to fulfill your obligation under the contract. That is necessary. Apology for the sound of a toddler screaming in the background. Sometimes I'm asked, by the way, if writers should hire a lawyer to look over these agreements, even if a literary agent is the one negotiating them. And I'll talk more about literary agents in a moment. I haven't actually known anyone to have a lawyer do this, but I didn't myself. But also, I'm not BFFs, with Stephen King. So maybe at some level, maybe when you're Stephen King, you get a lawyer involved. But typically what I'll tell people is that their literary agent can handle it. And technically, I actually used to be a lawyer, so you'd think I would be a little bit more pro lawyer. But these contracts, especially with like the big five publishers, are so boilerplate that I don't, and your literary agent is already in there working on your behalf and looking out for you. And it's what they do professionally. And because of those reasons, I don't think it's worth your money unless you have a super giant advance or you're signing with a publisher who isn't a major player in the literary agency. So the big 5 publishers are Penguin Random House, Hachette, HarperCollins, Simon & Schuster, and Macmillan. Okay. If you have a smaller publishing house, maybe that isn't as well known, or like you're not as confident in, or sure about, maybe you're confident, but you just don't know them super well. I don't know. In that case, maybe you do want to think about having a lawyer look over your contract. Certainly, if you don't have a literary agent, I would have a lawyer look over a contract. I would have someone come in, get another pair of eyes, a professional pair of eyes on the contract, from someone who is not you. Okay. So where does the literary agent come in? You are almost certainly going to need a literary agent to sell to a publisher. So there really isn't a way around this, but also it's good news because agents do more, like are so valuable. Great agents earn far more than their commission. I have plenty of material on how to get an agent, which I can link to, if you're curious. Agents take care of the parts that you don't want to do, like negotiating and connecting with editors and pitching your book so that you can write. And they also negotiate on your behalf. In the United States, it's standard for literary agents to take 15% commission on your domestic sales and 20% on your foreign sales. You should never go with a literary agent who asks you to pay them up front. That is not a thing that's done. You shouldn't have to pay anyone any money until they've made you money, and they will take a cut of that. So to continue our example of the $90,000 advance, that means that these 3 payouts would actually be 15% less each and 15% less overall. So instead of $30,000, they'd each be $25,500 after your agent takes that 15%. And again, this is domestically. For a foreign advance, it would be reduced by 20%. So if Germany buys your book for $5,000, you would get $4,000. And if you're curious why the percentage is greater for foreign rights, it's because usually your agent is here in the US and has to work with an agent abroad to sell your book in that country. And so that your agent and that other co-agent each take a 10% payout of your advance, totaling a 20% payout that you're paying collectively to them. All right, now let's talk how much you make per book sold, because this is often also asked. Often people ask me, do you make the same amount regardless of where I buy the book? No. So thank you for asking. If you want to go ahead and bank up some good karma for when your book comes out, start buying from independent bookstores instead of from Amazon. There are a lot of good reasons not to buy from Amazon, but to buy from independent bookstores. But one of them is that it's better for authors. Okay. So what I want to get into here is the standard breakdown for a publishing contract with a major publisher, what that looks like. So what that typically looks like, this is slightly oversimplified, but what that typically looks like is an author is going to get 10% of the hardback sale price. And as those numbers go up and up, that percentage increases slightly, all the way up to 15%. 7.5% of paperback sale price and 25% of digital versions. Okay. So if we're, with something like Amazon, which discounts book tremendously, that sales price is lower. And so typically the author is getting a smaller percentage. I mean, a percentage of a smaller number, which means making less. That's the simple version. All right. So when your book comes out, your publisher will do their best to try to support you, but you are really going to have to learn to be your own biggest cheerleader. I know this can be really hard for writers like me, right? We're writers. We tend to be quite introverted. Some of us are socially anxious, but you're going to have to learn to promote yourself. No one cares about your book's interest as much as you do. And so it's largely going to fall on your shoulders to market it. So just be prepared to tell everybody about your book, and consider enlisting friends as a team to help you promote it. Again, to wrap up, your book advance you're going to keep no matter what, but it obviously behooves both you and your publisher, both, for your book to sell well. And it will also make selling your next book easier. Thanks for being here. I hope this was helpful.